My dream was always simple. A piece of land, a farmhouse, maybe some animals, and the kind of freedom you just can't buy in a cookie-cutter neighborhood. See, I used to live under an HOA. And let me tell you, it was the worst mistake of my life. At first, I thought it would be nice. The houses looked pretty, the grass was cut the same way, and everyone seemed polite. But then, the letters started. The first one was about my lawn. Apparently, my grass had grown half an inch too tall during a busy work week, and suddenly, I was in violation. The second one was about my truck. I left it in my own driveway overnight, and the HOA claimed it was an eyesore for the neighborhood. The third one, my mailbox had a tiny dent on the side, and they demanded I replace it immediately or face a fine. It felt less like I owned my house and more like I was renting from some power-hungry neighborhood committee. Every time I checked my mail, I half expected another threat, another friendly reminder written in legalese. That was when I promised myself, I'm done with this. I started saving every penny I could, scrolling through listings late at night, dreaming of the day I could finally escape HOA tyranny. And after years of waiting, it finally happened. I found it, my dream farmhouse. A little white house with a red barn, sitting on a couple of acres, just outside the edge of town. White skies, green fields, and most importantly, freedom. The deed was crystal clear. No HOA. No committees. No fines. No neighbors telling me what color I could paint my front door. For the first time in years, I felt free. I thought I had finally left all that nonsense behind. But I had no idea that my dream farmhouse was about to attract the attention of the one neighbor who couldn't stand the idea of someone living free. Her name? Karen. The first morning I woke up in my farmhouse, I swear the air felt different. Back in the HOA neighborhood, I'd wake up to the sound of cars honking, dogs barking behind fences, and sometimes even Karen-like neighbors yelling at landscapers. But here, it was quiet. Not the scary, empty kind of quiet. This was peaceful. The kind of quiet that lets you hear birds chirping, the wind rustling through the trees, and the occasional rooster crowing from a farm down the road. I walked out onto my porch with a cup of coffee in hand, and for the first time in years, I felt like I actually owned the ground I was standing on. No one was going to send me a letter about how I park my truck. No one was going to find me because my grass dared to grow naturally. And if I wanted to paint my barn purple with green polka dots, guess what? My land, my choice. I spent the first few days settling in, moving boxes, setting up furniture, fixing little things here and there. I had big plans, a vegetable garden out back, maybe a chicken coop, and definitely some fruit trees along the fence line. But even in the middle of unpacking, I couldn't stop smiling. I'd finally escaped the HOA prison. Neighbors drove by occasionally, some waving politely, others slowing down to see the new guy. A couple even stopped to welcome me, bringing pies and introducing themselves. Real, genuine people, not nosy, clipboard-carrying rule enforcers. It felt like I'd stepped into a different world. Little did I know, though, the peace wasn't going to last forever. Because while most of my neighbors were friendly, curious, or just plain decent, there was one woman nearby who took it upon herself to make my life difficult. I didn't know at the time, but she was already watching me, counting how many trips I made, what was in my truck bed, and probably even how tall my grass was. And in just a couple of days, she was going to march right up my driveway and introduce herself in the worst way possible. That woman was Karen. It was the third day after I moved in. I was unloading some tools from the back of my truck when I saw her. She came striding down the gravel road like a sheriff marching into town. Short blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, a clipboard tucked under one arm, and a phone glued to her hand. Even from 50 feet away, I could feel the storm brewing. "Excuse me," she barked before I could even say hello. "Are you the new owner?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "Just moved in a few days ago." She gave me a quick once-over, the kind of look that says she had already judged me and found me guilty. "Well," she huffed, "I'm Karen. I'm the president of the Maplewood Estates HOA board, and we need to go over some rules with you." I almost laughed out loud. Rules? This farmhouse isn't part of Maplewood Estates. She smirked like I was a child who didn't understand how the world worked. "Oh, honey, all properties around here fall under our HOA. That means no livestock, no unapproved fencing, and no commercial equipment parked in your yard. And I saw that tractor of yours. I leaned against my truck and smiled. Ma'am, with all due respect, I bought this farmhouse specifically because it's not under an HOA. The deed and county records are crystal clear. Her face turned red immediately. That's impossible. Everyone here follows HOA guidelines. You can't just move in and ruin our property values with chickens or tractors or whatever nonsense you're planning. It's illegal. I shrugged. You're welcome to check the records. But I assure you, this place is outside your jurisdiction. She gasped, scribbled something on her clipboard, and stormed off, muttering about fines and board meetings. That was my first encounter with Karen, and I knew right then this was only the beginning. First clash. 2 days later, I came home to find a piece of paper taped to my front door. It wasn't from the county. It wasn't from the city. It was from Karen. Notice of violation, it said, in bold letters across the top. Apparently, I was in violation of 3 HOA rules. 1. Unauthorized vehicle, my tractor. 2. Unkempt lawn, even though I just mowed it. 3. Non-approved modifications, a wooden fence I'd repaired. I actually laughed out loud. This woman had printed up an official-looking form just to try and scare me. Later that afternoon, she showed up again. Did you get the notice? She asked, smug grin plastered across her face. Yeah, I said, holding it up. Pretty creative, but here's the problem. I'm not in your HOA. Her grin faltered. You can't just say that. All properties here are under our rules. I pulled out my folder, the one I kept with all the documents from my purchase. See this? Deed, parcel map, county records. My property line is here. Your HOA boundary is here. They don't overlap. She squinted at the papers like the words might magically rearrange themselves to prove her right. Well, I'll bring this up with the board. They'll make you comply. Good luck with that, I said cheerfully. I'll be out back planting tomatoes. Her jaw tightened. She ripped the fake notice out of my hand, spun around, and stomped off like a toddler who'd just been told no. That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't just misinformed. She was on a mission. Karen escalates. Word travels fast in small communities. Within a week, I started noticing people slowing down as they drove past my property. Some waved politely, others stared. It didn't take long to figure out why. Karen had been spreading rumors. According to her, I was breaking the law, bringing in farm animals, and planning to run a junkyard out of my barn. One evening, as I was unloading lumber for my garden beds, she stormed up again, phone camera pointed at me. I've reported you to the HOA board, she announced. You can't ignore us forever. Karen, I said calmly, this isn't your jurisdiction. I don't know your HOA a dime. Oh, we'll see about that, she snapped. I've already scheduled a board meeting. Right here on your property. They'll straighten this out. I raised an eyebrow. On my property? Without my permission? She scoffed. We don't need your permission. We run this neighborhood. I nearly choked on my laughter. Karen, you can't hold a meeting on private property without consent. But sure, invite your board. I'll show them the same documents I showed you. Her eyes narrowed. Fine. But when they see the condition of this place, they'll agree with me. You're a menace. I just smiled, knowing this would blow up in her face. Board meeting at the farmhouse. The meeting happened on a Saturday morning. I was out by the barn when I saw a small group approaching. 3 men in polos, a woman with a clipboard, and of course, Karen leading the charge like a general. Here he is, Karen declared. The violator. I set down my tools and walked over. Morning, folks. What can I do for you? One of the men stepped forward, looking embarrassed. We're from the Maplewood Estates HOA. Karen says your property falls under our association. We just need to verify. Of course, I said pleasantly. Follow me. I led them inside and laid out my documents on the kitchen table. Deed, parcel maps, county zoning records. Everything was highlighted and notarized. One of the board members adjusted his glasses. According to this, your property is definitely not in Maplewood Estates. In fact, it's listed as agricultural use. He's right. Karen's face turned crimson. What? That can't be right. He's lying. The man shook his head. It's all here. His farmhouse isn't under HOA jurisdiction. Another board member sighed. then there's nothing we can do. He's free to do what he wants within county laws. Karen exploded. You're just going to let him destroy our property values? With chickens and tractors and whatever else he's planning. The board members exchanged looks of annoyance. They'd clearly dealt with Karen's theatrics before. Karen, one said firmly, if his land isn't in the HOA, then it's none of our business. For the first time, Karen was speechless. Karen's meltdown. But Karen wasn't done. The next week, she marched back, fuming. You think you're clever, don't you? Hiding behind paperwork. Well, paperwork won't stop me. I raised an eyebrow. Paperwork? You mean the law? She jabbed her finger toward my yard. Your tractor is unsightly. Your fence is uneven. And if you think you're bringing in chickens, you've got another thing coming. I chuckled. Karen, I don't need your approval to live my life. You don't run this property. Her face twisted into pure rage. Fine. If the HOA won't stop you, I'll call the county inspector. We'll see how legal your little farm really is. And with that, she stomped off again, practically foaming at the mouth. At this point, I honestly found it entertaining. Sure, it was annoying to deal with her constant harassment, but I knew the truth. I was 100% in the clear. Still, I had to admit, I was curious to see what would happen when the county inspector showed up. County inspector's visit. A week later, a white county truck pulled up. Out stepped a man in a reflective vest, clipboard in hand. Morning, he said politely. We got a complaint about zoning violations on this property. I smiled knowingly. Let me guess. Karen. He chuckled. You're not the first to say that name. I invited him in, showed him the same stack of documents, plus the agricultural zoning code. He looked them over carefully, nodded, and said, Yep, everything's in order. You're perfectly within your rights to do whatever agricultural activity you want here. Chickens, gardens, tractors, you name it. As if on cue, Karen appeared at the end of the driveway, arms crossed. She marched up, demanding, Well, did you shut him down? The inspector shook his head. Ma'am, this property isn't under HOA jurisdiction. He's fully compliant with county laws. Karen's jaw dropped. That's not fair. He's ruining everything. The inspector gave her a flat look. Ma'am, please stop wasting county resources with baseless complaints. She sputtered, but for once she had no comeback. Watching her stomp away in defeat was one of the most satisfying sights of my life. Aftermath. After that day, the visits slowed down. Karen still glared at me whenever she drove past, but the constant threats and notices stopped. The HOA board wanted nothing to do with her crusade, and the county inspector had made it clear I was untouchable. Meanwhile, I settled into farmhouse life. I built my garden beds, planted rows of tomatoes and cucumbers, and yes, it got my chickens. Every morning, I'd collect fresh eggs while sipping coffee on my porch, watching the sun rise over my land. Some neighbors even started stopping by to chat. A few admitted quietly that they envied me for escaping HOA control. You're lucky, one man whispered. I wish I'd bought outside the neighborhood. I just smiled. Lucky? Maybe. But really, it was all about persistence and a little bit of research. Resolution and moral. In the end, Karen never gave up her glare, but she gave up her fight. She realized there was nothing she could do. And me? I finally had what I dreamed of, freedom. No more letters. No more fines. No more HOA drama. Just open skies, a little farmhouse, and a life I chose for myself. Sometimes, when I'm sitting on my porch, I think back to those days of stress, checking the mailbox, dreading another notice, feeling like a prisoner in my own home. And then I look around at my land, my barn, my chickens happily clucking, and I smile. Freedom tastes a lot like fresh eggs and homegrown tomatoes. And the best part? Not a single letter from the HOA in sight.